So there are some opportunities. Let me see if I can collapse this and expand the view. So this is the first solution. And what we're finding is that in some of the solution submissions, there's a disconnect with one concept or another. In the case of the module 1 solution, there was another assignment that had to do with enrolling in the packet in Net Academy. So basically, a related assignment had you enroll in Net Academy, and then you access that sign-in, and then you download and install the latest version of Packet Tracer. And what you want to do is open Packet Tracer and show Packet Tracer. What some students are doing is just showing the screen in Net Academy and saying, okay, Packet Tracer is loaded, but it's just showing the screen in Net Academy. It's not showing that Packet Tracer is installed. And unfortunately, if you don't have a screen that shows that Packet Tracer is loaded, then you can't log credit. Now, if there is a disconnect and this image does not show Packet Tracer loaded and instead just shows the download screen, then that's on me. But what you see here when you click the link is Packet Tracer loaded. It's on the screen. Okay. Does everybody understand? So
Yeah.
the other thing too is when you get into GRC Shields Up, some of you are clicking the wrong option. You're not clicking the silver button that is labeled all service ports. You're just clicking something on the screen and then universal plug and play shows up. And here it says your screen should look like this. And I'm getting submissions that do not look like this. They look like universal plug and play. Now, this is a little frustrating both for students and for me as an instructor because I'm giving you an example to go by. So without getting dramatic about it, I just got to say, if you receive a score for your first solution that says, yeah, this isn't what we're looking for, you can revise your submission and resubmit. Then it's really important at this time to take care of that and get it out of the way. We don't want to be doing this in the final weeks of classes, and certainly not going into the exam week, final exam week, okay? So everyone should have something out there for the module 1 solution. I've started to post scores for module 2, and I want to address that because we're dealing with a similar situation in module 2 where there are some specifics about the criteria. Now, in this case, when you go into module 2, what you find for the solution is 2 PDFs. And so the PDF is the primary reference. And you have a rubric that asks simple questions. Did the student display, submit, show, create output, so on, right? Having the same issue with the second solution. It's as if the resources that are there for your reference and your benefit aren't even being looked at, right? So people are turning in things, and in particular, it states right here, this is not the detail you get from an ipconfig result on a device. Okay? We're talking about the public IP address. Now, the reason that's significant is many of you did that in module 1. So right now I'm connected to the internet, and if I go to GRC Shields Up, and I click on Internet Vulnerability Profiling, it starts to show detail about my address almost immediately, like right here. Now that's something we didn't call out in a previous class, but I want you to see that that's one indication of your public IP address. Remember 208.49.194.161. If you click proceed, what comes up, if you click this link, that's for the universal plug and play. That's not what we demonstrated in the videos. That is not what we indicated in the detail. It says all service ports right here, all service ports. Now, when you click that, it's going to repeat the same thing, 204.49, this result right here. That's one way to get your public IP address. Now, if you do this for CMD, and I just want to, I want to hammer this home because I'm seeing confusion about this, right? If I do this and type in ipconfig without using /all, I get partial information. For your first solution, some of you just entered ipconfig without all. You want all. That gives you the details for your wireless adapter, including the MAC address. That's part of layer 2 and layer 3. And this address here is the internal gateway address for your private local network. It is not, there is no detail on this screen whatsoever that indicates anything about a public IP address. If you have virtual machines, it gets a little sticky because there are additional details related for virtual network adapters and so on, which gets to be a little confusing. But we're not looking at the Ethernet port, we're looking at the wireless adapter, right? And the one that has a working IP address. All right, so another way to find your public IP address is to go to Google and type in, what is my IP address? And it'll tell you. Google will tell you. Or you can go to network-tools, which evidently has been going through some changes. So it's not as quick or easy or simple to use. But essentially, this one in particular, right? You can choose, let's see, which option should we choose? I guess they removed this. Used to be that there was a field that displayed underneath the options, and there was a pull down menu. So if you go to DNS lookup, you can search the domain name records for the domain name for your internet service provider. Let's see if this also works. Let's go back. Let's go to who is. Oh, they don't even have it set up. Okay. So in that case, you can go back to, we'll come back to DNS tools. You can go to Google and search for who is, look up. And so a good option would be whois.com. And you can enter a domain name or an IP address. I'm going to enter this. And it's going to give me information about who this is. This is level 3, which means that the IP address that my internet service provider, which is Liberty, formerly Broadband VI, is getting its IP addresses from level 3, and that's a southeastern US internet service provider that is closer to the backbone of the internet. Now, that's also significant because you can, well, let's go back here to DNS. For DNS lookup, you could put, what is Liberty's domain name? Does anybody know? It's Broadband VI, but it's also Liberty. So let's use Broadband VI because that's what it used to be before it became Liberty. I'll just put broadband. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So here is a DNS. This is the host record for the DNS that contains the broadband VI domain. Okay. And that's good information to know. So that would satisfy the interest for that particular piece of the, so when you're looking at the public IP address, capture details showing the public IP address, the subnet mask, the gateway or router address, that's what you're getting from here. This is a, does everybody see this? So what would your gateway address be? Well, this is the network ID, right? And this is the first address of the range. So if you add 1, there's your gateway address. Does everybody understand how I got that?
Yeah.
Okay. Essentially, if you have this screenshot and you do this and capture it, you're good. So that's one way to satisfy the requirement. And then when it comes to the who is, right? If you, let's see if we go back to network dash tools. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. All right. So instead of using network dash tools, you'll use whois.com and then put in the information for that. You can also put in broadband VI instead of the IP address. And it's saying there's an invalid or unsupported domain. Well, that's interesting. Is everybody seeing this?
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
the transition with Liberty, and that's an interesting result. Now, what's Via? What is there? Via.com? So if you happen to use Via, you can put in via.com, or you can put in an IP address for your Via service, and you'll get this information, right? So this is the stuff you want to capture for the module 2 solution for section 3. I'll go ahead and update this and revise this, and I'll put a different alternative in here for the section 3, since network tools changed. Used to be very straightforward and very simple. Push come to shove, you can look up your own records. And another useful resource on the web, I think it's MBX Toolbox. There it is. So you can look up MX records, but then you can also use this same resource to look up other things. DNS lookup, right? For a given, MX means mailbox, right? So an MX record or MBX, that has to do with email. We'll be talking about that more. As far as the latest firmware, as long as you have a screenshot that shows what your current firmware is on your wireless router, and then you have a website view of that same model and brand showing the latest firmware and they match, then you're good. In some cases, people are turning in a picture of the bottom of their router, but it doesn't show the MAC address, meaning they have a picture of the router and it shows the brand and model, but it doesn't have the label on the bottom showing the MAC identity. So I'm scoring these now, and if there's anything that you're missing, now is the time to get back in there, revise your submission, and then get it in, okay? Any questions about what we've shared with the solution? Okay. What I'd like to do with the time remaining is finish a look at IPv6 with this, because I do want to comment on some of the detail that's shown, what's important and what's nice to know versus what you have to know. So I'll go ahead and start from here. So this is a screen we did share in our previous session. Basically, each of these acronyms are the local internet authorities. So when you look up someone's address, if it says that it's a RIPE address, that means it's from Europe, right? Or APNIC is from Asia, or AFRINIC is Africa, ARIN is North America, and LACNIC is Latin America and South America, okay? In case you were wondering about what each of those mean. So again, there isn't a whole lot of hex information that you need to know in order to be competent with this module. Your assessment won't ask you to convert a lot of stuff or interpret a lot of things, but later on we'll ask you to do that. For now, what we want you to understand is that we don't have classes. So there is no class A, class B, or class C. There is 4 times the number of address space. Instead of 32 bits, it's not 64, it's 128. It's 4 times the amount of ones and zeros, which is not 4 times the number of addresses. It gives us 64 bits just to define what a network is, and 64 bits to define each of the hosts in each of those networks, which is a huge number. Everybody does remember that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you write out a complete format for an IPv6 address, this is an ideal example of an IPv6 address. And you'll notice there's a lot of zeros that are repeating here. Whenever you have a string of zeros in the middle of the address, you can collapse that and just have 2 colons. So we could change this to read 2001 colon 0 Delta Bravo 8 colon 0000 colon 1111 colon 0200. That's what we mean by collapsing addresses, zeros in the middle. Now you can only do that once. So if you have like 2 strings of zeros here and 2 strings of zeros there, you can't have a pair of colons and then a pair of colons. You can only collapse one of those strings. So take the longest string of zeros. Typically it's the space between the network identity and the host identity. The important thing to understand is that very few internet service providers are actually working live with IPv6 and capable of supporting connections with IPv6. For that reason, if it's not available, you don't want to enable it. So here are some basic rules. Omit the leading zeros, right? So when you're dealing with hex, these are just handy things to know. You don't have to pronounce 01 Alpha Bravo. It's just 1AB. Or 09 Foxtrot 0, it's 9F0, right? Same way that you don't have to say in octet decimals, 010. You can write it out, but you don't have to. And that's the double colon rule. You can only do it once, however. So here they're asking you to go ahead and you can basically in IPv6, this means the same as this means the same as this. Or this means the same as this, which means the same as this. And that takes a little getting used to, which is why we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on IPv6, except for the basics. Now, this is the network portion of the address. This is the host portion of the address. No class, no classes, no CIDR. We're not worried about subnetting, none of that. Okay. There is something like DHCP, but it's not quite the same thing. So where we have dynamic host control protocol assigning version 4 addresses that we use every day, there's a different mechanism, and that's in your study guide. So when you have a global address, that's like the continent. And then you have local network addresses, that's like the country. So when you're defining the network, there are certain ranges, right? That's what's referred to as the subnet ID. So not to oversimplify, but if you're dealing with the continent and the country, that would go here. And then when you get closer to the actual neighborhood where the network exists, that's where this would happen. Okay. And then all the other 64 bits for the network, the identity of the host on that network are over here. We're not going to focus on routing right now, but yeah, so the local link address helps routers find where the neighborhood is. That's the important part to understand about local link. So the idea of unicast and multicast, we're going to cover that in greater detail in the next module. So we're not going to focus on that here. Let's see, what else do you need to know? When you enable IPv6, you have a different dialog box in Windows. So standard subnet prefix length is 64 because that's what identifies the network, right? So this would be the local gateway, and this would be the local identity of the local host. So what follows the pair of colons here, it takes a little getting used to, but once you're used to it, it's not as hard to read as you might think. Everybody remember no shut? No shutdown?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though we're working with IPv6, that old holdover is still valid, right? So you want to set up a configuration on a router so it can find these things. That's what your internet service provider has to set up before we can actually work with this. Now, hold up. So here it says stateful DHCP version 6, no slack. So I said that we don't have conventional DHCP. There's an alternative. We'll define that a little more later, but a number of things are different in the IPv6 universe, and one of them is that a lot of things are automatically determined by the device if all of the infrastructure is set up correctly. Let's say that again. If all of the infrastructure is set up correctly, then a lot of the addressing scheme works automatically in an IPv6 context. Let's see what else. So the global routing prefix, again, that's continent and nation, and then that's the local network neighborhood. When they talk about subnetting, they're just talking about having different networks in different locations for a given organization. If it's a large organization like a multinational corporation or a government agency in a lot of places. So the need to perform CIDR to conserve addresses isn't an issue, but having different networks defined is still a good idea for security purposes. And that's got better clarity. So you can define different local networks or subnets, but it's not done because you have to conserve addresses. It's done just to map out local neighborhoods for networks. And that's it. That's the one reference. Once again, the detail in your study guide is the most important to read and understand. Has anyone taken a look at this over the weekend in the study guide? Detail on IPv6. Are there any questions about IPv6?
There will be questions on Wednesday.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. All right. So it says, see this great video summary of IPv6 versus IPv4. If you haven't watched that yet, that's a good thing to view. It's quick. It's not, I hope it's the one I think it is. Yeah, it is. This is from Power Cert, and it's all of.
An IP address is a numeric address.
It's not. Yeah, it's 9 minutes.
Identifier for a computer or device on a network.
That's something that you should spend the time to look at, right? Yeah. The rest of this is stuff we've already talked about and explained, right? So we've just walked through all that first part. This last part is good to know. If you're pinging yourself to make sure that your network is working right, you ping : 1 for loopback. That's all you do. That's the same as this in IPv4. We've already said 2 main portions with a subnet mask. There are 3 essentials: the global prefix, the subnet or local network, like the neighborhood network, and then the specific system or host. So it is all very straightforward stuff. We'll entertain questions on Wednesday. I do need you to complete your solution for module 3. If you haven't done it yet, I'll be scoring the rest of the solution submissions today. And if you don't have those submitted, you're going to lose out on the opportunity to refine and max out your credit. So you're going to want to make a first attempt if you haven't already. Any questions before we clear today? All right, well, as you see the scores and you see comments on solution submissions, please make those corrections quickly and resubmit again so that you log the full credit for each upload, okay?